Sweet mother of Vexlar. What in the seven moons is that? Admiral Zorax Pentillion's normally composed voice cracked like a pubescent Gralzian as he stared at the massive vessel that had just dropped out of hyperspace. His second-in-command, Commander Tyla Vantari, blinked all four of her eyes in rapid succession. I think it's a human ship, sir. A human ship. Pentillion laughed, a nervous high-pitched sound that made several bridge officers turn around. That's not possible. The humans are barely out of their gravity well. Last intelligence reports said they were struggling to colonize their own moon. The massive vessel loomed larger on their view screen. It was ugly asymmetrical, and looked like someone had welded together several industrial waste containers and painted them with an uneven coat of matte black. Pentillion couldn't help but notice it also didn't have a single aesthetic feature. No ceremonial wings. No honor crests, not even a proper name displayed in gleaming quantum-shifting paint. Sir, Lieutenant Kwazak reported from the sensor station, his antennae quivering. Preliminary scans indicate the vessel is approximately 2.4 kilometers in length, but has multiple weapon emplacements. And, he paused, rechecking his instruments, and appears to be constructed primarily of steel and titanium alloys? You're joking, Pentillion said flatly. I am not programmed for humor, Admiral, Kwazak replied, completely missing the rhetorical nature of the statement. Pentillion resisted the urge to slam his fist into the command console. The Galactic Empire's 47th Fleet was the pride of the Sindarian Empire, with 6 capital ships including his own flagship, the eternal glory of the 17 ancestors. Each vessel was a masterpiece of advanced technology, constructed from quantum-stabilized neutronium alloys and equipped with singularity engines. And now they were facing what appeared to be a flying scrapyard. Hail them, he ordered, straightening his immaculately pressed uniform adorned with 37 medals of valor and conquest. Communications Officer Praxa nodded, her tentacles dancing across the holographic interface. Channel open, sir. Pentillion cleared his throat and activated his most imperious voice. This is Admiral Zorax Pentillion of the Sindarian Empire's 47th Fleet. You have entered restricted Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately or face immediate destruction. There was a long pause. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. Finally, the comm crackled to life. Yeah, hi there. This is Captain Amanda Keller of the Earth vessel Bob. How's it going? Mach. Pentillion blinked rapidly. Bob? He mouthed silently to his second-in-command, who shrugged helplessly. Did you say your vessel is named Bob? Pentillion asked incredulously. That's affirmative. The human voice replied cheerfully. Technically, it's an acronym for Big Orbital Battle Wagon, but everyone just calls it Bob. Pentillion struggled to maintain his composure. Captain Keller, was it? Your vessel is in violation of Treaty 7392B, which explicitly forbids human expansion beyond your solar system. Another pause. Then the human captain's voice returned, slightly less cheerful. Yeah, about that treaty. We don't recognize it, mainly because no one ever bothered to actually, talk to us about it. Hard to agree to something when you're not invited to the negotiating table. The treaty was negotiated with your world government, Pentillion snapped. The human laughed. It was a genuinely amused sound that made Pentillion's scales itch. We don't have a world government. Whoever you were talking to was probably just some random person who thought it would be funny to pretend they spoke for Earth. Let me guess, met them in a bar on Proxima Centauri Station? Commander Vantari leaned close to Pentillion's ear hole. Sir, she might be telling the truth. The diplomatic corps has been less than thorough in their vetting processes lately. Pentillion felt a headache forming between his eye stalks. Regardless of diplomatic misunderstandings, you are still in restricted space. Your vessel will power down and prepare to be boarded. No, that's gonna be a hard no from us. Admiral, Captain Keller replied. We're on a peaceful scientific mission to establish contact with galactic civilizations. But we're not big fans of being boarded. Our tends to make us twitchy. Scientific mission? Pentillion scoffed. gesturing at the view screen. That monstrosity is clearly a warship. Oh, Bob. Nah, this is just our first deep space vessel, multi-purpose design. We've got labs, hydroponics, manufacturing sectors, and guns, lots of guns. Lieutenant Kwazak's voice cut in urgently. Sir. I'm detecting multiple weapons systems coming online. Pentillion's headache intensified. Stand by all weapon systems, he ordered. Captain Keller, power down your weapons or we will be forced to open fire. Yeah, we're not going to do that either, Keller replied. Look, we really did come in peace, but we're also not idiots. We've been watching your empire expand for decades, slaving planets, strip mining colonies. The works, not exactly a sterling recommendation for galactic friendship. Pentillion felt his face flush dark blue with anger. How dare you? The Exandarian Empire brings order and civilization to primitive worlds. Keller's voice dripped with sarcasm. And I'm sure all those species whose planets you've conquered are just thrilled about it. Listen, here's what's going to happen. We're going to continue on our mission. You're going to let us pass. Nobody gets hurt, sir, Kwazak interjected. They've deployed what appear to be fighter craft. Pentillion looked at the tactical display. Sure enough, dozens of small vessels were emerging from the human ship's hangars. Captain Keller, recall your fighters immediately, Pentillion demanded. Those aren't fighters, Keller corrected. Those are survey drones. Unarmed. We're mapping the local space, though I notice you have deployed what are definitely warships. Care to explain the double standard? Pentillion looked at the tactical display again. Indeed, without him noticing, Commander Vantari had ordered their escort vessels to move into attack formation. Standard defensive protocol, sir, Vantari murmured. Before Pentillion could respond, the human vessel suddenly accelerated, moving with surprising speed for its ungainly bulk. Sir, they're heading straight for the Colossian Nebula, an officer reported. Pentillion frowned. The Colossian Nebula was a treacherous region of space, filled with gravitational anomalies and radiation storms. No sane captain would enter it willingly. They'll be torn apart, he muttered. Actually, Kwazak said, studying his readouts, they appear to be navigating it quite successfully. Their survey drones are mapping safe passages through the nebula in real time. Pentillion stared in disbelief. The nebula had claimed dozens of Imperial vessels over the centuries. Yet these humans were treating it like a Sunday cruise. Admiral, Communications Officer Praxa called out. We're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Audio only. Put it through, Pentillion ordered. Captain Keller's voice filled the bridge again. Hey there, Admiral. Just wanted to let you know we've found something interesting in this nebula. Looks like the remnants of several ships, Imperial Registry. Crashed. Got survivors aboard too. Lucky we came along, huh? We're picking them up now. Pentillion's jaw dropped. That's impossible. No one could have survived in there. Well, someone did, Keller replied. We're bringing them aboard now, providing medical treatment. Looks like they've been stranded for months, years maybe. Not very nice of you to abandon your own people like that. Pentillion turned to his second in command. Do we have any missing vessels in that region? Vantari nodded hesitantly. The science vessel Eternal Seeker disappeared in that sector 3 cycles ago. All hands presumed lost. This is absurd, Pentillion muttered. They can't possibly have found survivors. Resin, transmitting proof now, Keller's voice announced. The main view screen flickered, showing a medical bay where several bedraggled Exandarians in tattered Imperial uniforms were being treated by human medical personnel. One of them looked directly at the camera and spoke in a hoarse voice. This is Chief Science Officer Zelnar of the Eternal Seeker. Is that really you, Admiral Pentillion? We've been sending distress signals for 3 years. Pentillion felt his blood run cold. The Empire had written off the Eternal Seeker as destroyed in a navigational accident. Standard protocol. No rescue mission had ever been launched. It seems like you've got some explaining to do to your people, Admiral. Keller's voice cut in. Meanwhile, we'll continue our mission of peaceful exploration and… what's the phrase? Oh, right. rescuing your abandoned crews. Funny how that works out. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sir, Commander Vantari said quietly, what are your orders? Pentillion stared at the tactical display, where the human vessel was continuing its journey through the nebula, now accompanied by dozens of their survey drones, mapping the safe paths. Stand down weapons, he finally ordered. And open a channel to Imperial Command. We need to report this development. And the humans? Vantari asked. Pentillion watched as the ungainly human vessel, the absurdly named Bob, continued to navigate the supposedly impassable nebula. Let them go, he said softly. But keep monitoring them. I want to know everything about that ship, everything about these humans. As the bridge crew rushed to comply with his orders, Pentillion couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just become a much more complicated place. In the Colossian Nebula, Captain Amanda Keller sat back in her command chair and grinned at her executive officer. Think we made an impression, Jake? Commander Jake Donovan chuckled. You could say that. Though I'm not sure antagonizing the local Galactic Empire on our first day out was in the mission briefing. Maybe not, Amanda replied, watching as the rescued aliens were treated in the medical bay, but neither was finding abandoned survivors. Funny how things work out. You know they're going to follow us, Jake pointed out. Amanda's grin widened. I'm counting on it. Let them see what humans are really about. Might give them something to think about. As the massive human vessel continued its journey through the nebula, Admiral Pentillion watched on his viewscreen, a growing sense of unease settling in his stomach. These humans were nothing like the reports had indicated. They weren't primitive. They weren't cautious, and they certainly weren't intimidated by the might of the Zendarian Empire. Perhaps, he thought, it was the Empire that should be worried. Sir, Vantari interrupted his thoughts. Imperial Command is responding to our transmission. They want an explanation for why we allowed an unauthorized alien vessel to violate our space. Pentillion sighed heavily. Tell them we've made first contact with a new species, and that our initial assessment may have been incomplete. As he watched the human ship disappear deeper into the nebula, Admiral Pentillion had the distinct feeling that the galaxy was about to change forever, and not necessarily in the Empire's favor. 3 standard weeks later, Grand Marshal Varrock Dresnar of the Zendarian Imperial Fleet paced furiously across the polished obsidian floor of the War Council chamber. His ceremonial cape, woven from the iridescent scales of 1,000 conquered species, swirled around him like an angry storm cloud. This is unprecedented, he bellowed, causing several junior officers to flinch. How did we miss this? An entire species developing interstellar capabilities without our knowledge. Admiral Pentillion stood at rigid attention, trying not to show his discomfort. Being summoned to the Imperial capital usually meant one of 2 things, promotion or execution. The odds weren't looking favorable for the former. The humans appeared to have developed their technology unconventionally, Grand Marshal Pentillion explained. They didn't follow the standard progression patterns we monitor for emerging species. Explain, Dresnar demanded, his 7-foot frame looming over Pentillion. Most species develop quantum communications before achieving practical interstellar travel. The science director, Lazuli Quantum, interjected. Her translucent body pulsed with nervous energy. Humans skipped that stage entirely. They brute forced their way into space. Dresnar's crest flared with irritation. Impossible. No species achieves interstellar travel without mastering quantum mechanics first. The humans did, Pentillion said. They're using fusion drives and primitive FTL technology based on something they call Alcubierre warping principles. It's inefficient, dangerous, and by all rights shouldn't work at scale, but somehow they've made it functional. Dresnar stopped pacing. And this vessel, this Bob, tell me about its capabilities again. Pentillion swallowed hard. Based on our scans and subsequent intelligence, it's a multi-purpose vessel. Part warship, part science vessel, part colony ship, crew complement of approximately 7,000 humans, armed with kinetic weapons, directed energy weapons, and, he hesitated, and nuclear missiles. Nuclear? Dresnar roared. They're using atomic weapons in space? Yes, sir. Apparently, they never developed graviton disruptors or plasma cannons. Instead, they've refined their primitive technologies to a surprising degree of effectiveness. The war minister, a hulking Zendarian named Brutok Hammerfist, laughed from his seat at the council table. You can't possibly be suggesting these primitive weapons pose a threat to Imperial vessels? Pentillion cleared his throat. Our simulations suggest their kinetic weapons, while crude, could potentially penetrate our shields through sheer velocity and mass, and their nuclear weapons, while primitive, operate on principles our defensive systems aren't calibrated to counter. The chamber fell silent. The idea that primitive technology could have advantages over their advanced systems was almost heretical. Continue your report, Dresnar ordered, his voice dangerously quiet. After our initial encounter, we tracked the human vessel through the Colossian Nebula. They proceeded to the Vorax system, where they made contact with the Voraxians. The Voraxians? Dresnar's eyes narrowed. There's one of our subject races. Yes, sir. The humans interfered. Define interfered. Dresnar growled. Pentillion winced. They offered the Voraxians medical technology to combat the plague that has been decimating their population. The plague we engineered to keep them compliant, War Minister Hammerfist bellowed, slamming his fist on the table. The humans somehow determined the plague was artificial and provided the Voraxians with the means to neutralize it. Pentillion continued. They also established a trading relationship and offered them protection. Dresnar's face darkened to a dangerous purple. Protection? From us? A single human vessel dares to challenge the might of the Zendarian Empire? Not just one vessel anymore, sir. Pentillion said quietly. Our latest intelligence indicates they've constructed 3 more ships since our encounter. Larger ones. The chamber erupted in exclamations of disbelief. Impossible. No species builds that quickly. Dresnar raised a hand, silencing the outburst. How? How are they constructing vessels so rapidly? Science Director Quantum consulted her data tablet. They appear to have a different approach to construction than we do. While we perfect each vessel over decades, the humans build quickly, test, fail, and improve. They call it iterative design. The second vessel they launched, designated Steve by the humans, is already 30% more advanced than Bob. Steve? War Minister Hammerfist sputtered. They named another warship Steve? Apparently it stands for Strategic Territorial Exploration Vessel, Quantum explained. Though intercepts of their communications suggest the acronym was created after they'd already decided to name it Steve. Dresnar closed his eyes, as if in physical pain. What else? Pentillion hesitated. They've made contact with 6 other species in the sector, including 3 that are currently under Imperial control. And? Dresnar prompted, his voice deadly quiet. And there are rumblings of discontent among those subject species. The humans are sharing technology, medicine, and resources without demanding submission or tribute. It's an unusual approach to interspecies relations in this sector. War Minister Hammerfist slammed both fists on the table. They're undermining Imperial authority. This cannot stand. We must crush these humans immediately, before their influence spreads further. Dresnar held up a hand. What do we know about their homeworld? Their defenses? Intelligence Director Nyx Shadow Weaver emerged from the darkened corner where she'd been silently observing. Her species could manipulate shadows themselves, and she used this ability to dramatic effect in council meetings. Earth is a death world, Grand Marshal, she said, her voice like silk over broken glass. Explain, Dresnar demanded. By our standards, their planet is utterly inhospitable. Extreme temperature variations from scorching to freezing. Atmospheric oxygen levels that would be toxic to most sentient species. Gravity 30% higher than Imperial standard. Constant natural disasters, storms, floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. And yet they survived. Dresnar noted. More than survived. They thrived. Shadow Weaver's shadows swirled around her. They evolved as prey animals originally, constantly hunted by their planet's apex predators. But they developed intelligence as a survival strategy. then used that intelligence to become the apex predators themselves. Fascinating evolutionary path, Science Director Quantum murmured. But how does this information help us militarily? Shadow Weaver's glowing eyes narrowed. It means they're accustomed to fighting against overwhelming odds. They expect hardship. Their entire civilization is built on overcoming challenges that would destroy most species. And most concerning of all, she paused dramatically. They aren't united. You present their disunity as a threat? Hammerfist scoffed. Absolutely, Shadow Weaver replied. Most species achieve space travel only after unifying their planet under a single government. The humans have done it with hundreds of competing nations, corporations, and interests. They've turned their chaotic nature into a strength. They compete, innovate, and evolve faster than any unified species could. Dresnar turned to Admiral Pentillion. Your recommendation? Pentillion straightened his spine. This was the moment his career, and possibly his life, depended on. Diplomatic engagement. Grand Marshal, to attempt to bring humans into the Imperial sphere through negotiation rather than conquest. War Minister Hammerfist laughed harshly. Cowardice. One swift military action would put these upstarts in their place. Actually, Pentillion countered. Our analysis suggests a direct military confrontation would be problematic. Explain, Dresnar demanded. The humans fight differently than we do. Imperial doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force, technical superiority, and strict adherence to established tactics. Humans are improvisational, unpredictable. They embrace chaos in battle. Shadow Weaver nodded. Their military history is fascinating. Time and again, their wars have been won not by the side with superior numbers or technology, but by the side that adapted faster, thought more creatively, or simply refused to surrender despite overwhelming odds. So you're suggesting we cannot defeat them? Is Nerix? Most in can? Dresnar's voice was dangerously soft. I'm suggesting, Pentillion said carefully, that the cost of victory might exceed the benefit, especially when diplomatic options remain unexplored. Before Dresnar could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A communications officer rushed in, breaking all protocols of the War Council. Grand Marshal. Urgent news from the Tigora sector. Speak, Dresnar commanded. The humans, they've liberated the Morgolian slave worlds. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Morgolians had been an imperial slave race for centuries, mining precious minerals from their hazardous home planets. How? Dresnar roared above the commotion. The officer swallowed hard. They didn't use military force, sir. They simply showed up with their vessels, offered the Morgolians freedom and protection, and the Morgolians revolted against our forces. Our garrisons? Hammerfist demanded. Our warships? The garrisons were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The Morgolians outnumbered them 100 to 1 once they decided to fight. As for our warships, the officer looked terrified to continue. Speak, Dresnar commanded. The human vessels engaged our squadron directly. They won, Grand Marshal. 4 Imperial warships destroyed or captured, and the humans suffered only minor damage. The silence that fell over the chamber was absolute. Impossible, someone whispered. Dresnar turned to the enormous tactical display dominating one wall of the chamber. Show me, he ordered. The display flickered to life, showing recorded footage from the battle. The Imperial vessels were arrayed in perfect formation, executing textbook maneuvers. The human ships, now 4 of them, moved in seemingly random patterns, changing course unpredictably, splitting up and regrouping in ways that made no tactical sense, until suddenly they did, as Imperial ships found themselves caught in crossfires or exposed from unexpected angles. What is this madness? Hammerfist whispered. No rational commander would employ such tactics. That's the point, Shadow Weaver said quietly. They're not fighting according to any doctrine or rulebook. They're improvising, adapting moment by moment. On the display, a human vessel took a direct hit from an Imperial cruiser's main battery. Instead of attempting to evade further fire, it accelerated directly toward the Imperial vessel, closing the distance so rapidly the Imperial gunners couldn't adjust their aim. Insanity. Hammerfist muttered. No, Pentillion said. Courage. The recording ended with Imperial vessels retreating or surrendering, while the Morgolian homeworld erupted in celebration. Grand Marshal Dresnar was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Pentillion. You've had the most direct contact with these humans. What are they planning? Conquest, Pentillion considered carefully. I don't believe conquest is their goal, Grand Marshal. Based on all observations, they appear genuinely committed to exploration and establishing peaceful relations with other species. But they've demonstrated they will fight to protect themselves and others from what they perceive as oppression. They judge us? Dresnar's crest flared. We who have brought order to 1,000 worlds? They see our empire differently than we do, Pentillion said carefully. Where we see necessary order and hierarchy, they see subjugation and exploitation. Dresnar turned back to the tactical display, which now showed the current positions of known human vessels throughout the sector. 4 ships, spreading out in different directions, making contact with dozens of species. Options, he demanded. War Minister Hammerfist straightened. We must crush them now, before more of our subject worlds get ideas about freedom. Assemble the fleet. 10,000 warships will reduce their homeworld to ash. Science Director Quantum shook her head. A direct assault would be catastrophic. Even if we won, the cost would be astronomical, and there's no guarantee of victory against a species that fights like these humans do. Containment, then, Intelligence Director Shadow Weaver suggested, establish a quarantine zone around their territory, prevent them from spreading further. Pentillion cleared his throat. With respect, directors, I believe we're past the point where containment is possible. The humans have already made contact with 17 species across 12 sectors. Their influence is spreading exponentially. Then what do you suggest, Admiral? Dresnar asked, his voice laden with dangerous undertones. Pentillion stood tall. Adaptation. Grand Marshal, we must adapt. The galaxy is changing. The Empire must change with it, or risk becoming obsolete. You dare suggest the mighty Zendarian Empire should change its ways because of one upstart species? Hammerfist bellowed. What? I suggest, Pentillion said calmly, that we have encountered something new. Something that doesn't fit our existing paradigms. And history teaches us that those who fail to adapt to new realities are doomed to extinction. Dresnar was silent for a long moment, staring at the tactical display where the human ships continued their journey through Imperial space, changing everything they touched. A compromise, he finally said. We will not attack Earth directly. Not yet. But neither will we allow these humans to continue undermining Imperial authority. Admiral Pentillion, you will take a diplomatic contingent to establish formal contact with Earth, assess their true capabilities and intentions, determine if coexistence is possible. Pentillion bowed. Yes, Grand Marshal. And Admiral? Dresnar added. Make it absolutely clear to these humans that while we respect their uniqueness, the Zendarian Empire has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We do not surrender territory or authority easily. Of course, Grand Marshal. As the council dispersed, Intelligence Director Shadow Weaver fell into step beside Pentillion. The Grand Marshal is sending you on a suicide mission, she whispered. He expects you to fail. Perhaps, Pentillion replied. Or perhaps he genuinely wants to understand what we're facing before committing to war. I've served in the Imperial government for 2 centuries, Admiral. Trust me when I say the Empire doesn't change, it conquers or it destroys. There is no third option. Pentillion glanced at her. Maybe that's been true until now, but these humans, they changed the equation. 3 months later, Admiral Pentillion stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmonious Exchange, approaching the Sol system. Earth's star was visible now, a yellow dwarf similar to billions of others throughout the galaxy. Yet somehow, this unremarkable star had produced a species that was now causing the mightiest empire in the galaxy to question itself. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through. Pentillion ordered. The view screen activated, showing a diverse group of humans seated around a conference table. At their center was a woman Pentillion recognized immediately. Admiral Pentillion. Captain Amanda Keller said with a smile. "We meet again." "Welcome to Earth." "Captain Keller," Pentillion acknowledged. "You've been busy since our last encounter." Keller's smile widened. "Just introducing ourselves to the neighborhood. I hear you're here on a diplomatic mission this time, not a military one." "Indeed. The Exandarian Empire wishes to establish formal relations with Earth." "Wonderful," Keller replied. "We look forward to productive discussions. Though I should warn you, we've learned quite a bit about your empire since our last meeting. The terms of any relationship between us will need to reflect certain, non-negotiable human values." Pentillion nodded slowly. He'd expected as much. "The Empire has existed for 10,000 years, Captain. It does not change easily." "With respect, Admiral," Keller replied, "change is the only constant in the universe. Even mighty empires must adapt or perish. The question is whether the Xandarian Empire is wise enough to recognize which path leads to survival." As his vessel entered Earth orbit, Admiral Pentillion gazed down at the blue-green world that had produced these extraordinary beings. For the first time in his long career, the future seemed truly unpredictable. And somewhere deep inside, beneath his imperial conditioning and centuries of certainty and Xandarian superiority, he felt something unexpected. Hope. The galaxy was changing. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was changing for the better. And all because of a peculiar species from an unremarkable yellow star, who built ugly ships with ridiculous names, who fought with desperate courage and extended friendship to the oppressed, who looked at a mighty galactic empire and weren't afraid to say, "We can do better than this."